They said the stars were silent. For centuries, humanity stared up at them, wondering if they were truly alone, or if the universe was just waiting for them to grow teeth. By the time we reached beyond our solar system, the answer came loud and clear. We were not alone. But no one, not even the boldest dreamers of Earth, could have predicted the reception. The Galactic Concord, an ancient interstellar coalition of more than 70 species, had been watching, studying us, measuring our wars, our revolutions, our impossible recoveries from self-inflicted near extinction. And finally, they reached out, not with peace, with caution, and something worse, an invitation. It arrived in a burst of quantum-locked code, relayed from a Concord listening station on the edge of Proxima Centauri. The message was brief, sterile, and cold. To the representatives of Earth's united government, you are hereby invited to attend the 591st Peace Summit of the Galactic Concord on the neutral moon Calvaros, in Sector 22R. As a newly spacefaring civilization, your presence is requested for final deliberation regarding your species, continued integration, or permanent quarantine. Failure to attend will be taken as implicit rejection and result in immediate enforcement action as per Concord Resolution 188. This is your only notice. The United Earth Council gathered within hours. Presidents, prime ministers, chancellors, and admirals, each face painted in equal parts awe and dread. We're not being welcomed, President Gozi said flatly, her voice hard as the concrete bunker beneath Geneva. We're being judged. General Elena Voss stood in the shadows of the command room, arms crossed, uniform immaculate. She wasn't a politician. She didn't care to be one, but her voice cut through the murmurs. If they wanted us gone, they'd have already launched whatever passes for a planetary killer in their arsenal, she said. This is theater. They want the illusion of consent, a ritual to bury us with clean hands. No one argued. Instead, the debate turned to who should go. Voss didn't volunteer, but she didn't say no either. 10 days later, the Aegis Dawn broke atmosphere. It was the pride of Earth's military-industrial fleet, a diplomatic cruiser wrapped in stealth mesh, carrying enough hidden weaponry to wipe out a city if things got unfriendly. And the humans, in their usual contradictory brilliance, staffed it with two things: warriors and lawyers. Among them was John Mercer, former war crimes prosecutor, fluent in 7 alien dialects, infamous for once cross-examining a sentient gas cloud into confessing to genocide. He arrived last, carrying nothing but a briefcase, a flask of whiskey, and a hard stare that said, "I don't bluff, because I don't have to." "You look like hell," Voss said, greeting him on the loading ramp. "You say that every time we meet," Mercer replied, stepping aboard. "And every time, I think, maybe this time, she'll shoot me instead of making me fly coach on a death trap. You're in first-class armored. Try not to spill whiskey on the missile controls." Their mission was simple on paper: represent humanity, make the case for inclusion, avoid war. But the truth was raw and ugly. The Concorde saw humanity as a virus, an unpredictable, rapidly evolving threat that had clawed its way into space in a fraction of the time it had taken other species. Our rise wasn't just meteoric, it was terrifying. Where the Orati took 10,000 years to develop warp travel, Earth had done it in 2 centuries of chaos and innovation. While others argued philosophy and interstellar ethics, humans had sent AI colonists to terraform Mars before we had clean oceans. We didn't wait. We didn't ask permission. And worst of all, we survived things that should have ended us, twice. The Aegis Dawn entered Calvaros orbit without fanfare. The moon itself was a crystalline desert hanging above a green gas giant. Beautiful, lifeless, and perfect for galactic diplomacy. There were no civilians, no trade, just silence and law. Voss stood on the observation deck, watching the alien ships dock. They came in all shapes: towers of light, spinning orbs, tentacled cruisers like living whales. Some were ceremonial. Others bristled with weapons so exotic they could make quantum foam cry. She spotted a Vokari dreadnought and narrowed her eyes. The Vokari Dominion was the real power behind the Concorde. Old money, old guns, and older grudges. They looked like obsidian statues wrapped in velvet, each word oozing civility and threat. "They'll lead the vote to quarantine us," Mercer said, appearing beside her. "The others will follow." Voss didn't respond right away. Then, "I've fought empires before. I don't scare easy." Mercer gave a dry laugh. "Good, because I brought a copy of the Articles of Human Sovereignty and a backup nuke, just in case the vote goes south." Voss didn't laugh. "Make sure the nuke's in the escape pod. I hate running late." As they disembarked, the Concord delegation stood in perfect formation. Dozens of species, hundreds of delegates, not one smile. An 8-limbed Arlaxian official stepped forward, translucent head glowing with neural activity. "Human delegation, welcome to Calvaros." Mercer stepped forward. "Ambassador John Mercer, representing the United Earth Government. And this is General Elena Voss of the Terran Defense Corps." The Arlaxian's eyes shifted shades. "Military presence is unorthodox." Mercer smiled coolly. "So is genocide by consensus. We thought it wise to bring someone with battlefield experience." A pause. Then the Arlaxian nodded slowly. "You may proceed." The crowd parted. Cold stares followed them. "They hate us," Voss muttered. "They fear us," Mercer corrected. "Hate is honest. Fear is leverage." That night, in their quarters, Voss watched security feeds from across the moon. Several species were already lobbying against humanity's inclusion. Protests, secret meetings, quiet bribes. "We're not at a summit," she said. "We're at our trial." Mercer poured 2 drinks, handed her one. "And they've already written the verdict." She sipped. "Then why show up at all?" He looked her dead in the eye. "Because sometimes you don't show up to win. You show up so they never forget what it cost to fight you." Voss raised her glass. "To the galaxy's worst nightmare." Mercer clinked his glass to hers. "To us." Outside, in orbit, the Vokari dreadnought adjusted its position, watching, waiting, and far beyond the gas giant, cloaked in darkness, a second human ship stirred, black, angular, and silent. Because humanity didn't just bring diplomats. We brought a contingency, just in case. The stars around Sector 22 were deceptively calm. From the cockpit of the Aegis Dawn, they looked like frozen fireflies, each a light year's promise of peace or peril. The diplomatic cruiser coasted silently, running on minimal emissions to stay within Concord regulation during approach. But General Elena Voss never trusted stillness. "Not out here." "Long-range scans?" she asked, her voice clipped. "Clear," replied Lieutenant Harlow. "No active drives, no radiation trails, and no anomalies within 100,000 clicks." "That's what bothers me," she muttered. The corridor outside the bridge hummed with soft diplomatic chatter and the occasional whir of security drones. Ambassador Mercer was in the envoy chamber, prepping his opening arguments and sipping tea like he wasn't flying into a political minefield. Voss, meanwhile, wore full combat armor beneath her diplomatic uniform. It started with static. A faint distortion flickered across the external sensors. Just for a second, barely enough for the AI to log it. Voss caught it anyway. "Run that again," she said sharply. Harlow frowned, already tapping through logs. "Could be a solar flare echo, could be a cloak failure," Voss snapped. "Patch the external feeds to infrared and quantum trace. I want everything above absolute zero." A moment passed. Then a pulse of red appeared, brief, moving fast, arcing behind one of Calvaros's smaller moons. "Contact," Harlow whispered. "Sound battle alert. Lock down all diplomatic quarters." The first shot came 30 seconds later. It wasn't a warning. A particle lance, invisible to the naked eye, slammed into the Aegis Dawn's port shielding, ripping a gouge into the stabilizers and sending the cruiser into a hard spin. Klaxon screamed. "Shields to max. Return fire. Non-lethal." Voss barked, strapping herself into the command chair. The view shifted, highlighting 3 fast attack ships rising from the shadow of the moon. No insignia, no identification. All teeth. Pirates? No. Too organized. "Target drive signatures," she said. The AI complied, pulling heat maps and spectrographs. Voss's gut clenched. Those weren't junkers cobbled together from scrap. Those were Concord-patterned stealth corvettes. And that meant only one thing. Someone in the Concord had sent them. "Of course," she muttered. "Nothing says diplomacy like a knife in the dark." Below deck, John Mercer was thrown across his chamber as the ship bucked again. His teacup shattered against the wall. "You know," he muttered, dragging himself upright, "I once defended a mining baron who killed 50 protesters with a railgun. This feels eerily familiar." He slapped a comms panel. "Bridge, this is Mercer. Do I need to be worried?" Voss's voice came back, hard and fast. "Only if you can't hold your breath in vacuum." Mercer grimaced. "Point taken." Back on the bridge, Voss orchestrated the defense with surgical efficiency. The Aegis Dawn wasn't a battleship, but it had been retrofitted with adaptive shielding, point defense drones, and experimental rail batteries hidden under its hull plates, just in case diplomacy needed teeth. "Release the Raptors," she ordered. 3 compact drone fighters shot from the underbelly, each no larger than a shuttle. They moved like angry wasps, diving between the enemy corvettes and targeting their engines with EMP torpedoes. A direct hit. One attacker went dead in space, its engine flaring out in a blue cascade. "Tag it for retrieval," Voss said. "I want to know who sent that thing before Concord security feeds us a lie." Another lance shot slammed against the hull, rattling the bridge. "We've got boarding hooks," Harlow shouted. 2 contacts latched to Deck C. Voss stood. "I'm going down." "General protocol is suspended when aliens try to knife me on a peace run," she said, drawing her pulse pistol. "You have the bridge." Deck C was already in chaos. 2 enemy strike teams had cut through the emergency airlock using monomolecular torches. They wore pressure armor and faceplates like black mirrors, moving in perfect formation with plasma rifles spitting death. Voss hit the corridor running. She didn't hesitate. 3 quick shots. The first dropped a soldier mid-turn, the second caught another in the knee, and the third fried a breacher trying to hack the AI core. "Defensive grid to corridor 3, she barked. Ceiling turrets emerged, spitting ionized rounds. The intruders scattered. One ducked under the fire and lunged at her, plasma blade flashing. Too slow. Voss sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, and slammed her elbow into his throat. The armor crumpled, and she followed up with a point-blank shot to the gut. Another down. Behind her, Earth Marines poured into the corridor. Plasma fire lit the walls. The rest of the enemy team retreated, dragging their wounded. Too late. The airlock blew again, this time from the inside. Vacuum sucked the remaining attackers out into space, their screams cutting off in an instant. Voss exhaled, blood trickling down her temple. Later, in the war room, she stood over the wreckage of the captured corvette. Mercer leaned on the console beside her, expression unreadable. "They branded it as pirates," he said, holding up the Concorde's official response. "Unregistered vessels, criminal affiliations, regrettable breach of neutrality. Blah, blah, blah." Voss pointed at a small engraving near the corvette's engine core. 3 concentric circles. "Vocari. They didn't even try to hide it," she muttered. "Why would they?" Mercer said, "This isn't a covert war. It's theater. They want us scared, rattled, maybe dead." Voss looked at him. "So what's our next move?" Mercer's jaw tightened. "We don't flinch." That night, Voss stood alone in the observation dome, watching Calvaros grow larger on the screen. The moon shimmered under the pale light of the gas giant. Her mind replayed the fight, the way they moved, the precision. This wasn't a warning shot. It was an audition. Someone in the Concorde wanted a war, and they were hoping humanity would strike first to give them the excuse they needed. She didn't say a word. Instead, she tapped a secure line. "Activate Black Contingency 1. The voice on the other end replied, "Acknowledged. The backup ship will shadow from Kuiper range." The bloodlight was coming, just in case. The Grand Hall of Calvaros Peace Summit was a cathedral of alien architecture, vaulted ceilings spun with iridescent light, walls that breathed faintly as if alive. It was designed to impress and intimidate, and it did both with ruthless efficiency. Elena Voss stood near the entrance, her posture rigid, gaze scanning the crowd. Around her, representatives of dozens of species mingled in clusters, whispering in dozens of dialects, most of them openly hostile. Across the room, Ambassador John Mercer adjusted his tie and flipped through his datapad with practiced ease. To the untrained eye, they were just 2 diplomats preparing for their roles. But they were much more. Voss wasn't a politician. Her strength came from precision and command, not smooth words and empty promises. Mercer, however, was a master of nuance, sharp-tongued, ruthless when necessary, but always calculating. "You know," Mercer said, approaching her, "if this were a courtroom, this would be the part where the prosecution delivers a dramatic opening statement." Voss gave a dry chuckle. "Then I'm glad I'm not a lawyer. Yet here you are," he teased. "General by day, diplomat by night." She arched an eyebrow. Someone has to keep the peace when the lawyers get distracted. Their mission was straightforward yet impossible. Convince the Galactic Concord to accept humanity as a member civilization, not a quarantine threat. The voting session was hours away. Rumors circled through the corridors. The Vocari were pushing hard for quarantine. They had reasons. Humanity's rapid rise, our unpredictable history of wars and resilience, the unsanctioned colonization of Mars and the outer planets, all signs of reckless aggression. Other species, like the Silith and the Orati, debated quietly. Some saw potential allies in humans, others feared a Pandora's box. Mercer flipped his datapad shut. "I've reviewed the Concord Charter. They claim to value peace and stability. Yet here we are, staring down the barrel of quarantine and exile." Voss nodded. "Rules are words until someone enforces them with power." "Exactly," Mercer said. "That's why I've drafted our opening address to highlight humanity's resilience, creativity, and capacity for cooperation." "And what about the facts they don't want to hear? The messy parts? War crimes? Rebellion? Our failures?" Mercer's eyes sparkled. "Those make us human." Voss smiled for the first time. "We're not perfect, but we fight to be better." As the delegates began to gather, the Concord speaker, a massive entity with shifting tendrils and eyes that glowed like stars, floated to the center of the hall. "Welcome," it intoned in perfect common tongue, "to the 591st Galactic Peace Summit. Today, we determine the fate of a new civilization, humanity." A murmur swept the hall. Voss tightened her grip on her pistol's holster. Mercer steadied his voice and stepped forward. "Esteemed delegates," Mercer began, voice calm but authoritative, "humanity stands before you not as conquerors, but as survivors. We have risen from the ashes of our own destruction, forged alliances amid chaos, and built a future on the brink of the impossible." He scanned the room, eyes curious, skeptical, some cold as void, met his. "We ask not for blind acceptance, but for the chance to prove our worth. Our history is not flawless, but it is one of adaptation, growth, and cooperation." A Silith delegate hissed softly, "Words mean little when history is stained with blood." Mercer didn't flinch. "And yet, it is that bloodshed that fuels our drive for peace." Voss stepped forward, voice low and steady. "Humanity's journey is unique. Our conflicts have been brutal, yes, but they forged a species capable of unparalleled innovation and empathy." She glanced at Mercer. "We are here to negotiate, not to submit." The hall hummed with tension. After the speeches, the floor opened for questions. One Vocari delegate, regal and cold, rose. "Your species is young and untested. How do we know you will not bring war to our borders? Your history is littered with violence." Voss's eyes flashed. "Because we have learned consequences. Because every war taught us that survival depends on alliances, on trust, even with those who once fought us." Mercer added, "And because our very presence here shows our willingness to engage, to be judged by your laws, not dictated by fear." The summit stretched for hours, debates growing heated. Outside the grand hall, in shadowed corridors, deals were brokered and threats whispered. Voss and Mercer met in a side chamber, exhaustion lining their faces. "The Vocari want quarantine no matter what," Mercer said. "They see us as a contagion. Then we need to make them see us as a cure," Voss replied. They pored over intelligence reports, clandestine messages, intercepted communications, hints of a deeper conspiracy to keep humanity out. At one point, Mercer confided quietly, "You know, there's talk of a faction within the Concord that profits from conflict. They don't want peace. They want a controlled war." Voss nodded grimly. "We've faced those before." "Then it's not just about diplomacy," Mercer said. "It's about survival." That night, as the summit hall emptied, Voss and Mercer returned to their quarters. We're not just fighting for acceptance, Voss said. We're fighting for a future. Mercer poured 2 drinks. To the humans, loud, messy, and impossible to ignore. She raised her glass. To the nightmare they fear. Outside, beyond Calvaros's cold surface, the stars watched on, silent witnesses to a story just beginning. The Peace Summit's grand hall, with all its alien majesty and glittering grandeur, was a stage for diplomacy. But behind the shimmering facades, shadows moved. General Elena Voss felt it like a chill crawling under her skin. The day's debates had ended, but the corridors hummed with whispered deals and covert negotiations. The true power plays were never public. She and Ambassador Mercer stepped into a narrow hallway lined with polished crystalline panels that warped reflections, twisting images into unrecognizable shapes. "Tell me," Mercer said softly, "do you trust any of these creatures?" Voss didn't hesitate. "Trust? No. I expect they want to see us broken." Mercer smirked. "Broken or blood dry? Same difference." They had barely passed the grand security checkpoint when an alarm pulsed quietly through the ship's comms, a subtle red flash in their wrist implants. "Code black," Voss said instantly. "Someone's breached security." They rushed to the security command center where holographic screens flickered, displaying multiple camera feeds from the summit complex. The feed from the lower chamber showed a figure darting through shadowed corridors, a humanoid, but with distinctly non-human features, long limbs, smooth skin that shimmered faintly in the low light. "Unidentified intruder," the security chief announced, eyes wide, bypassing biometric locks and stealth protocols. Voss and Mercer exchanged a quick glance. "This is no ordinary thief," Voss said. "Someone's hunting us, or something else." The intruder moved with uncanny grace, bypassing guards and surveillance with ease. It was clear they knew the layout intimately. "Track their destination," Voss ordered. "Lock down all exits." Mercer's jaw clenched. "We're sitting ducks in this maze." Suddenly, the intruder appeared on a security feed, standing before a massive vault door, a secure holding chamber for sensitive Concord archives. "Why here?" Mercer wondered aloud. Voss's eyes narrowed. "Because that's where the truth sleeps." Inside the vault, old relics and data crystals from thousands of years of galactic Concord history were stored. Among them were files on quarantined civilizations, secret dossiers, and, most importantly, documents concerning humanity's sudden appearance on the galactic stage. The intruder pulled a sleek device from their belt and jammed it against the vault's locking mechanism. The door hissed open. Back at security, Voss and Mercer coordinated their response. "Send a tactical team," Voss ordered. Quietly, no alarms. As soldiers moved into position, Voss and Mercer hurried through the maze of corridors, closing in. Suddenly, the intruder slipped out of the vault, data crystal in hand. Voss raised her pistol. "Stop. You're under arrest." The figure froze, then turned slowly, revealing sharp, intelligent eyes. "Vokari, why do you steal from your own?" Voss demanded. The intruder smiled, a cold, humorless curve. "Because not all Vokari agree with the quarantine. Some of us believe humanity deserves a chance. But to prove it, we need evidence. Evidence of those who conspire to trap you." Mercer stepped forward. "Then you're an ally?" The Vokari hesitated. "In a way, but trust is a currency we both lack." Voss weighed the situation. "We can't risk letting you escape with that data, but we can't stop you either. Not without losing what you found." The intruder's fingers danced over a wrist console, transmitting the data. "Consider this an offer," the Vokari said. "Work with me. Expose the faction that fears humanity's rise." Back in the war room, Voss and Mercer examined the stolen data. Encrypted transmissions, financial records, and intercepted orders showed a covert faction within the Concord, the Shadow Council, pulling strings to keep humanity isolated, profiting from perpetual conflict. "Corruption beyond imagining," Mercer said. Voss leaned back, thinking, this changes everything. The Shadow Council was more dangerous than they'd imagined. They had influence in every corner of the Concord, manipulating wars, controlling trade, and now orchestrating the quarantine. If humanity wanted peace, it would have to be one on 2 fronts, the diplomatic chamber and the shadows. That night, Voss and Mercer met with the Vocari informant in a secure chamber. Your faction risks everything by helping us, Mercer said. Because peace is worth any price, the Vocari replied. Together, they began to plan. To expose the Shadow Council, they would need proof, allies, and most importantly, patience. Outside, the stars twinkled coldly, but inside the chamber, a spark had been lit. Humanity was no longer just fighting for acceptance. They were fighting to unravel a conspiracy that threatened the entire galaxy. The cold corridors of Calvaro's summit complex seemed endless, a labyrinth designed to disorient even the most seasoned visitor. Yet for General Elena Voss and Ambassador John Mercer, every step echoed a growing sense of urgency and danger. The revelation of the Shadow Council's machinations had changed everything. It was no longer just about pleading humanity's case in the open council chambers. They were now entangled in a conspiracy that threatened not just their bid for membership, but the fragile balance of galactic peace itself. The gathering storm. Voss stood by a panoramic window, staring out at the swirling nebulae and distant stars. We're up against more than political resistance, she said quietly. The Shadow Council controls trade routes, military contracts, even intelligence networks. If they want us out, they'll make sure the galaxy never hears our side. Mercer joined her. I sharp. We need allies. And fast. But who can we trust? Voss asked. The Vocari are divided. The Silith are too cautious. And the Orati, they keep their own secrets. Mercer tapped his datapad. Our informant claims there are factions within each species opposed to the Shadow Council. They've been quietly watching us, waiting for proof. This data is our key. The first contact. That evening, under the cloak of a false ceasefire, Voss and Mercer arranged a secret meeting with representatives of the galaxy's dissenters. In a dimly lit chamber, framed by ancient symbols from forgotten worlds, 3 figures awaited them. The first was Raeltor, a Silith elder with eyes like polished obsidian and a voice like wind through glass. Next was Carathon, an Orati strategist, lean and sharp, her multiple limbs folded gracefully. Finally, their Vocari informant, whose name they still didn't know. We know the Council's influence is suffocating, Raeltor began. We cannot allow one faction to dictate the fate of billions. Carathon's gaze was calculating, but exposing them means risking war. The Council's tendrils run deep. They will strike hard. The Vocari spoke softly. The Council fears exposure more than open conflict. If we present undeniable evidence, we can rally the galaxy to our cause. Mercer nodded. That's our plan. But it's fragile. One misstep, and we're finished. Voss clenched her fists. We have no choice. A network of shadows. Over the next days, the group worked tirelessly. Data was decrypted, messages cross-referenced, and alliances cautiously built. The Shadow Council had hidden their crimes behind layers of forged transactions, falsified battle reports, and silent assassinations. One thread led to another, a secret military buildup on a distant moon, a mysterious blackout in the Concord's communication grid, unexplained disappearances of dissenting voices. Each discovery tightened the web of corruption and increased the stakes. Betrayal within. Then, the unthinkable happened. One evening, as Voss and Mercer reviewed newly acquired data, an urgent alert flashed on their comms. Security breach, the voice crackled. Unauthorized access detected in the summit's command center. Rushing to the scene, they found their secure network compromised. Someone had stolen key evidence. Mercer's face hardened. We've been betrayed. Voss ground her teeth. One of us leaked the location. The hidden enemy. Suspicion hung heavy in the air. Everyone was a potential traitor. The dissenters convened in secrecy, trying to uncover the mole. Paranoia grew. Raeltor warned, we are dealing with ghosts, agents who vanish before you see them. Carathon added, the Council's reach is beyond anything we imagined. Voss stood tall. We will root them out. The turning point. Despite the betrayal, the dissenters refused to back down. They launched a covert campaign, leaking fragments of evidence to neutral parties, stirring unrest and drawing attention to the Council's misdeeds. Mercer and Voss coordinated with allies across the galaxy, rebels, whistleblowers, even some Council members disillusioned by corruption. The tide began to shift. humanity's resolve. In the council chambers, the debate continued. Humanity's case was no longer just a plea for membership. It was a rallying cry against tyranny and secrecy. Voss addressed the assembly, voice ringing with determination. We are not perfect, but we stand for truth, for justice, for a future where the galaxy is united, not divided by shadow and fear. The chamber fell silent. Mercer knew this was only the beginning, into the unknown. As the summit approached its climax, Voss and Mercer prepared for what lay ahead. They faced enemies seen and unseen, allies fragile as glass, and a galaxy on the brink. But humanity had something no other species did: relentless determination and an unbreakable will to survive. We fight not just for acceptance, Voss said, but for the right to define our own destiny. Mercer smiled grimly. And if they want a war, we'll give them one. The stars beyond Calvaros shone cold and distant, but inside the summit, the fires of resistance burned bright. The web was tightening, but humanity's spirit was tighter. The calm that followed the first ripples of rebellion was fragile, too fragile. As the secret network of dissenters gained momentum, cracks began to show, not only in the ranks of the Shadow Council's foes, but among the allies themselves. General Elena Voss paced the cold steel floor of the clandestine war room aboard the Ardent Resolve, humanity's flagship near Calvaros. Every face there was taut with worry and determination, but beneath that, a subtle tension simmered, a tension fueled by paranoia and the impossible stakes ahead. The weight of suspicion, the betrayal of the stolen data had left them vulnerable, and no one could say who had done it or why. Mercer sat at the center of a holographic map, its blue light casting shadows on his weary face. We can't keep operating in the dark, he said. If the Shadow Council has agents inside our ranks, or worse, among our new allies, we risk everything. Voss nodded grimly. Trust is our currency, and it's running dangerously low. Seeds of doubt. The Vocari informant, the enigmatic figure who had first broken ranks to aid humanity, became a focal point of suspicion. Why did you come forward? Voss demanded during a private meeting. The Vocari's eyes gleamed with an unsettling calm. Because I believe in what humanity represents, but I do not ask you to trust me blindly. Mercer leaned in. You expect us to believe you voluntarily handed over secrets that could get you killed? The Vocari smiled thinly. Sometimes, the future is worth more than survival. Despite their doubts, the truth was clear. Without the Vocari's help, the Shadow Council's hold might never have been cracked. The fragile coalition. At the secret meeting with Raeltor and Carathon, tensions escalated. Raeltor's voice was sharp. The human approach is reckless. They push for confrontation when subtlety is needed. Carathon countered. Subtlety will get us killed. The Shadow Council does not negotiate. It crushes. Voss intervened. We don't have time for disagreements. The galaxy is watching. We must present a united front. But the fractures were evident. Infiltration and sabotage. The situation worsened when a covert supply convoy to the dissenters was ambushed. Explosions rocked the remote moon where weapons and encrypted communications were to be stored. Voss and Mercer barely escaped the blast, though several trusted soldiers were lost. This isn't random, Mercer said. Someone tipped them off. Raeltor's expression darkened. A mole. The hunt for the mole. The coalition launched a discreet investigation. All communications were monitored, suspects questioned, everyone's loyalty examined under a harsh light. Paranoia infected the group like a virus. Voss found herself second-guessing even her closest officers. In one tense interrogation, a young soldier broke down, confessing to selling information, but only because his family had been threatened. A costly sacrifice. Faced with no other choice, the coalition executed the traitor swiftly, both as punishment and warning. Voss stood over the soldier's lifeless body in a quiet chamber. This war isn't just fought with weapons, she whispered. It's fought with every choice we make. Mercer's voice was grave, and sometimes those choices break us. The Council strikes back. With every move the dissenters made, the Shadow Council countered with ruthless efficiency. Rumors spread that entire sectors had been sealed off, dissenters arrested or disappeared. The Galactic Concord's official media painted humanity as a reckless insurgent species, dangerous and untrustworthy. Voss watched the news feeds, frustration mounting. They want us isolated. broken, a ray of hope. Despite the mounting pressure, a surprising ally emerged. One of the Shadow Council's senior members, a species known as the Draenir, usually silent in political matters, contacted Mercer with an offer. I cannot stand idle while the Concord falls into corruption, the Draenir representative said in encrypted transmission. They proposed covert support for exposing the Council's crimes. Calculated risk. The coalition debated fiercely over accepting aid from an insider of the enemy's camp. Trust is fragile, Raeltor warned. But without allies, we fall, Mercer countered. Voss made the final call. We accept, but we watch their every move. The price of trust. As the coalition strengthened its position, the fractures within deepened. The Vocari informant revealed a devastating secret. The Shadow Council had been experimenting with biological weapons designed to target human DNA. It's worse than we thought, Voss said. They want us gone by any means necessary. The gravity of the threat united the coalition, if only briefly. Resolve in the darkness. In a quiet moment aboard Ardent Resolve, Voss and Mercer stood side by side, looking out into the vastness of space. We're up against an enemy who fears us. Not just our power, but what we represent, Mercer said. Voss's voice was steady. Then we give them a reason to fear. With the galaxy's fate hanging in balance, they steeled themselves for the battles ahead, knowing that trust might be their most dangerous weapon. The galaxy had changed. The simmering tension that once hovered just beneath the surface now roared like a tempest, shaking the foundations of the galactic concord and threatening to tear it apart. General Elena Voss stood on the bridge of the Ardent Resolve, the hum of the ship's engines a steady reminder that time was running out. Around her, the crew moved with a focused urgency, aware that the next moves could trigger a war unlike any the galaxy had seen. The coalition of dissenters was no longer a shadowy faction but a force growing in strength and resolve. But with every victory came a cost, and the echoes of war now resounded everywhere. A fractured peace. The official peace of the Galactic Concord was shattered. News reports filtered through comm channels. Skirmishes flared on remote outposts, supply lines sabotaged, diplomatic envoys attacked. The Shadow Council, desperate to maintain its grip, had begun deploying special forces, elite units loyal only to their secretive leaders. Voss studied the holographic battlefield projections, each red blip representing a clash, a loss, or worse. This isn't containment, she said grimly. It's escalation. Mercer, standing beside her, nodded. And it's only going to get worse. The first strike. The coalition decided to strike first, targeting a key communications hub on the outskirts of the sector controlled by the Shadow Council. The goal was simple but high risk: disrupt the Council's ability to coordinate, buy time for their allies to mobilize, and reveal the Council's weaknesses. Voss led the operation personally, commanding a fleet of ships and ground forces. As the Ardent Resolve slipped through the void toward the target, the tension was palpable. Into the breach. The assault began with precision strikes from orbital drones, disabling enemy radar and communications. But the Council's forces were prepared. Missiles streaked through space, explosions lighting the darkness like distant fireworks. Voss's tactical team coordinated ship maneuvers, dodging and weaving through the deadly dance of destruction. On the ground, Mercer led an elite squadron, tasked with securing the communications array. They moved swiftly through shadowed corridors, encountering fierce resistance. Blood and fire. The firefight was brutal. Mercer's team was pushed to their limits. Grenades detonated, laser fire seared walls, and comrades fell. Yet the squad pressed on, fueled by something beyond orders, a fierce belief that their actions would tip the scales. Hold the line, Mercer shouted, rallying his soldiers. Amid the chaos, a young recruit named Kira saved Mercer from an ambush, earning his respect. Thanks, he said, breathless. We're in this together, she replied, eyes fierce. A moment of triumph. After hours of relentless fighting, the squad reached the heart of the communications hub. Mercer hacked into the mainframe, planting virus payloads designed to cripple the Council's systems. As the countdown began, alarms blared, a warning that reinforcements were arriving. The team fought their way back to extraction, barely escaping before the hub exploded in a blinding fireball. Cost of victory. Back aboard the Ardent Resolve, celebrations were muted. The loss of soldiers weighed heavily on everyone. Voss stood silently, staring at the roster of fallen. "This is what war costs," she said softly. "But it's a price we must pay." Mercer approached, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We honor them by fighting smarter and harder." A rift among allies. The victory was bittersweet. Among the dissenters, old disagreements resurfaced. Railtor criticized the human willingness to risk lives for bold strikes, calling it reckless. Carathon argued that such actions were necessary to break the Council's hold. Voss intervened, emphasizing the need for unity. Yet the rift hinted at deeper fractures that the enemy could exploit. Shadows in the dark. Unbeknownst to the Coalition, the Shadow Council had suffered but was far from defeated. Behind closed doors, its leaders plotted retaliation. They unleashed a covert strike force known as the Nightshade Legion, trained in assassination, sabotage, and psychological warfare. Their target, the heart of the Dissenters' coalition. The first target, late one cycle, the Nightshade Legion struck. A safe house on a neutral moon was destroyed in a precision bombing. Among the casualties was one of the Vocari dissenters, a critical informant who had supplied valuable intelligence. The loss sent shockwaves through the coalition. Rising resolve. Voss convened an emergency council meeting. "The council wants us afraid," she said, "but fear is a weapon we refuse to wield." Mercer added, "We fight not just with weapons, but with our will." Railtor and Carathon, despite their differences, agreed. The coalition vowed to strengthen security and continue their campaign. Humanity's flame. In a quiet moment, Voss and Mercer stood looking out at the stars. "This war is unlike any other," Mercer said. "It's not just about territory or power. It's about what kind of future we want." Voss smiled faintly. "And humanity will fight to protect that future, with fire in our hearts and steel in our hands." As the ardent resolve prepared for the battles ahead, one thing was clear. The echoes of war would shape the destiny of the galaxy, and humanity was ready to answer the call. The tranquil beauty of Calvaros, a moon nestled in the outer rim of the Lyris sector, was shattered as the first warships of the Shadow Council appeared on the horizon. Once a peaceful outpost, Calvaros had become the Coalition's critical stronghold, a beacon of hope and resistance in the sprawling darkness of the galaxy. General Elena Voss stood atop the command platform inside the fortified citadel, her gaze fixed on the distant fleet assembling beyond the atmosphere. The tension was palpable. The air inside the base was thick with anticipation and the metallic scent of fear. A fortress under threat. Calvaros was humanity's prize. Its location made it a vital strategic hub for communications and logistics, linking allied forces scattered across the sector. Losing it would cripple the Coalition's ability to coordinate and strike back effectively. "Enemy fleet is deploying heavy cruisers," reported Lieutenant Halvorsen, voice tight with urgency. "Estimated attack in T-4 hours." Voss nodded curtly. "All units prepare for immediate defense. Activate orbital shields and deploy interceptors. We hold this ground." Around her, the commanders snapped to action, their voices a mix of professionalism and desperation. The calm before the storm. As the moon's twin suns dipped beneath the horizon, casting long shadows over the fortified walls, the Coalition's defenders made their final preparations. Mercer walked among the troops, offering words of encouragement and quiet reassurances. The veterans steeled themselves, the rookies wide-eyed but resolute. "I know this is our moment," Mercer said to a group of soldiers. "Remember, we fight not just for Calvaros, but for every soul who believes in freedom." In a secluded chamber, Voss convened a quick strategy meeting with her closest advisors. "We need to buy time," she said. "The longer we hold, the more reinforcements can arrive." Railtor, his alien features etched with concern, spoke up. "Their fleet outnumbers ours. We must rely on the moon's natural defenses and our own ingenuity." Carathon, ever the pragmatist, added, "We should set traps within the city. Use guerrilla tactics to disrupt their advance." Voss considered the council, knowing that victory would demand every ounce of resolve and cunning. The attack begins. At first light, The silence of Calvaros shattered as the Shadow Council's fleet launched a barrage of plasma fire and missile strikes. Explosions lit the atmosphere, sending shockwaves that rattled the city's defenses. Orbital shields strained under the assault, but held, barely. Voss's voice crackled over the comms. Focus fire on the lead cruisers. Protect the surface installations at all costs. The Coalition's fighters swarmed into the fray, weaving between volleys of enemy fire, engaging in high-speed dogfights that lit the void with streaks of deadly light. Ground war. Beneath the orbital chaos, the Shadow Council's troops began their assault on Calvaros's surface. Armored vehicles rolled through the city streets, while infantry units moved in coordinated waves, attempting to breach the Citadel's outer defenses. Mercer led the Coalition's ground forces, rallying soldiers as they fought to hold key positions. In the labyrinthine alleys and ruined buildings, close-quarters combat erupted, gunfire echoed, grenades exploded, and hand-to-hand fights broke out amidst the rubble. The human spirit. Despite overwhelming odds, the defenders of Calvaros refused to yield. Voss visited frontline positions, her presence a beacon of courage. She found a group of engineers desperately repairing a damaged energy relay under heavy fire. "Keep it running," she urged. "Our lives depend on it." One engineer, a grizzled veteran named Tarek, nodded fiercely. "We'll hold, General." For humanity, betrayal in the ranks. But not all was as it seemed. Inside the command center, a sudden alarm blared, a security breach. Voss's heart sank as data screens flickered, revealing an internal sabotage. A trusted officer, Lieutenant Commander Silva, had been feeding information to the Shadow Council. Voss confronted Silva in a tense standoff. "Why?" she demanded. Silva's eyes were cold. "The Council offers power. Your rebellion is doomed." Before Voss could react, Silva triggered an emergency lockdown, sealing off vital systems and plunging parts of the base into darkness. Desperation and resolve. With the base compromised, chaos erupted. Mercer coordinated a counterattack to regain control, leading a team to override the lockdown and secure critical systems. Fighting through the darkened corridors, they faced ambushes and traps set by the saboteur. At one point, Mercer was pinned down by enemy fire, saved only by a daring rescue from Kira, the young recruit who had proven herself time and again. Turning the tide. After hours of brutal struggle, the Coalition regained control of the command center. Silva was captured and removed, his betrayal a bitter wound but a stark reminder of the stakes. With systems restored, Voss ordered a counteroffensive. Orbital strikes targeted the Shadow Council's landing zones, while ground forces pushed the invaders back. An unexpected ally. As the battle raged, an unanticipated fleet arrived. Draunir warships, their dark, sleek forms cutting through space. The Draunir, once neutral, had decided to openly support the Coalition after witnessing the Council's atrocities. Their firepower turned the tide, forcing the Council's forces into retreat. Aftermath. The siege ended with Calvaros still standing, scarred but unbroken. The Coalition mourned the fallen and tended to the wounded. Voss addressed her people, her voice steady despite exhaustion. "This victory is ours, but the war is far from over." She glanced at Mercer and their allies. "We fight not just for survival, but for the hope of a new dawn." The cost of war. In the quiet aftermath, Voss reflected on the cost. The betrayal, the losses, the sacrifices, it weighed heavily on her. Yet, beneath the pain, a fierce determination burned. The siege of Calvaros had proven humanity's resilience and spirit. The galaxy had heard their message loud and clear. Humanity would not be crushed. The victory at Calvaros had bought the Coalition precious time, but the war was far from won. The Shadow Council, though battered, still held vast resources and dark secrets that threatened to unravel everything the dissenters fought for. General Elena Voss stared at the flickering holographic map displayed in the command room of the Ardent Resolve. The key to turning the war lay somewhere deep in the Council's domain. A facility known only as the Core, a heavily fortified data center rumored to hold the algorithms controlling their advanced AI networks and military operations. The mission brief. The Coalition's intelligence had uncovered a rare opportunity, a weak point in the Corps' defenses, a narrow window during which an infiltration team could breach the facility, disrupt the Council's systems, and seize control of their AI command. "This is our best shot," Boss told her officers. "If we succeed, we can cripple the Council's war machine and level the playing field." Mercer stepped forward. "The infiltration team will be small and specialized. Stealth, precision, and speed are vital." Voss nodded. "You're leading it." A murmur rippled through the room. Mercer was both respected and feared for his tactical brilliance and his willingness to face impossible odds. Assembling the team. Mercer wasted no time assembling his team, a mix of seasoned operatives, hackers, and engineers, each with a critical skill set. Among them was Kira, the fierce young recruit who had proven herself during the siege of Calvaros, her courage and quick thinking earning Mercer's trust. There was also Dr. Elias Thorne, a cybernetic expert and former council scientist who defected to the Coalition after witnessing their ruthlessness. Lastly, Rin, an alien scout from the Vokari species, known for unparalleled stealth and sensory abilities. "This team is small but lethal," Mercer briefed them. "We're going deep behind enemy lines. Failure is not an option." Into the lion's den. The mission began under cover of darkness. Using a modified stealth shuttle, the team slipped past orbital defenses and descended toward the planet housing the core. The terrain below was harsh and alien, a sprawling network of jagged cliffs and toxic wastelands surrounding the towering facility. As they approached, the ominous silhouette of the core rose like a fortress of steel and glass, its surface bristling with antennas, sensor arrays, and automated turrets. The infiltration. The shuttle touched down in a concealed valley, and the team disembarked with silent precision. Using advanced cloaking gear, they navigated the toxic terrain, avoiding patrols and automated sentries. Rin's keen senses detected hidden traps and motion patterns, guiding the group safely through the maze of defenses. They reached the perimeter fence, a shimmering energy barrier pulsing with lethal force. Dr. Thorne approached the control panel, fingers flying over his portable console. "This barrier's powered by a quantum matrix," he murmured. "I can hack it, but only for a limited time." With a spark of static, the barrier flickered and dimmed, granting them passage. Inside the core. Inside, the facility was a cold, sterile labyrinth of corridors humming with the pulse of countless servers and data streams. Security drones patrolled relentlessly. Kira led the way through tight spaces, disabling alarms and electronic locks with practiced skill. They encountered a squad of elite guards, augmented with cybernetic implants, tasked with protecting the heart of the machine. A brief but intense firefight erupted. Mercer's squad fought with calculated efficiency, using the environment to their advantage. Rin's agility and speed made him nearly invisible, striking down foes before they could react. The AI Nexus. Finally, they reached the central chamber, the AI Nexus. A colossal sphere of shifting lights and data streams hovered in the center, the brain of the Council's war machine. Dr. Thorne began interfacing with the Nexus, his fingers dancing over the holographic interface. "The Council's AI controls everything: troop movements, supply chains, even their propaganda," he explained. "If we seize this, we dismantle their entire operation." But as he worked, the AI began fighting back, launching countermeasures, virtual defenses that manifested as digital phantoms and traps. A battle of minds. Inside the virtual battlefield, Dr. Thorne battled to override the AI's code while Mercer and the others defended the physical perimeter. The AI unleashed waves of security bots and hacked defenses, the chamber shaking with electromagnetic pulses. Kira hacked into the facility's defense systems, turning turrets against incoming reinforcements. Meanwhile, Rin scouted for incoming enemy squads, neutralizing threats before they could breach the chamber. The tension was unbearable. Each second could mean life or death. The critical breakthrough. After hours of relentless cyber combat, Dr. Thorne found a weakness, a backdoor hidden deep in the code. With a surge of energy, He injected a viral payload designed to corrupt the AI's command protocols. Lights flickered wildly. The AI Nexus shuddered, its omnipresent voice distorted into static. The war machine's grip began to crumble. Extraction and aftermath. With the AI crippled, Mercer gave the order to retreat. The team raced back through the labyrinth, dodging reinforcements alerted by the AI's failure. They reached the shuttle just as alarms blared and enemy forces closed in. The ship lifted off, barely escaping a barrage of plasma fire. The ripple effect. Back aboard the Ardent Resolve, the team was hailed as heroes. But Voss knew this was just the beginning. The Council's systems are vulnerable now, she declared. It's our chance to strike harder and faster. Mercer looked out the viewport of the stars. The heart of the machine is broken, he said quietly. Now we must dismantle the rest. Humanity's edge. In the war against a seemingly invincible enemy, it was humanity's adaptability, courage, and unbreakable spirit that shone brightest. The victory at the core was not just a tactical triumph. It was proof that even the most powerful machine could be undone by human will. As the coalition prepared for the battles ahead, one truth was clear. This war would be won by those who fought not only with weapons, but with their minds and hearts. The battle against the Shadow Council had stretched across countless worlds and years, but as the battered coalition fleet gathered above the ruined surface of the Council's capital, a new chapter in the saga was about to be written. General Elena Voss stood on the bridge of the Ardent Resolve, her gaze steady as the first rays of the binary suns pierced the heavy clouds over the planet below. The air was electric with anticipation. The final assault was moments away. The final offensive. With the AI control compromised and the Council's forces disorganized, the coalition had a rare and vital advantage. Voss addressed the assembled fleet commanders via holocom, her voice carrying the weight of leadership and hope. Today, we end the tyranny that has blighted our galaxy for far too long. Our unity, our courage, and our resolve have brought us to this moment. Fight not just for victory, but for the future of all free beings. The battle unfolds. The coalition fleet surged forward, plasma cannons blazing, fighters weaving through enemy fire in coordinated waves. Below, the planet's surface erupted as ground forces led by Mercer and Kira landed in the capital city's shattered streets. The remaining Council loyalists fought fiercely, but without the AI's command, their coordination faltered. Mercer moved with relentless determination, rallying troops and pushing through enemy lines to reach the Council's central fortress. Face to face, inside the fortress, Voss confronted the Shadow Council's Supreme Chancellor, a figure cloaked in dark power and ancient ruthlessness. You cannot win, Voss said firmly. Your reign ends today. The Chancellor sneered. You underestimate the darkness within humanity. You will fall, like all others. A fierce duel of tactics, will, and strength ensued. Voss's training and experience clashed with the Chancellor's brutal cunning. Unity and diversity. Outside, the coalition forces fought not just as humans, but as a diverse alliance of species and cultures united against a common enemy. Raeltor, Karathun, Rin, and others stood shoulder to shoulder with human soldiers, their combined strength overwhelming the defenders. This unity was humanity's greatest weapon, an unbreakable bond forged through shared struggle and respect. The turning point. As the battle reached its climax, Mercer's team breached the fortress control center. With quick precision, they disabled the remaining defense systems and secured the area. The Council's hold on the capital crumbled. Victory and sacrifice. The Supreme Chancellor was captured, his power broken. But the victory was costly. Many brave souls had fallen, including some of the coalition's finest. Voss held a solemn ceremony, honoring the fallen and reaffirming their purpose. This war was not fought in vain, she said. Their sacrifice lights our path forward, rebuilding and hope. With the Council's regime dismantled, the coalition faced the monumental task of rebuilding. Former enemies extended tentative hands, knowing that the future depended on peace and cooperation. Voss and her allies began laying the groundwork for a new galactic order, one based on justice, equality, and shared prosperity. Humanity's legacy. As she looked out at the dawn breaking over the capital, Boss felt a deep sense of pride. Humanity had faced insurmountable odds, shadowed by powerful enemies, betrayed from within, and tested in fire. Yet they had emerged stronger, proving that courage, empathy, and unity could overcome even the darkest forces. The next horizon. Far away, Mercer prepared for the next mission. This war might be over, but the universe was vast, and new challenges awaited. Kira stood beside him, her eyes bright with resolve. "We fight for the stars now," she said. Mercer smiled. "And we'll never stop." Epilogue. A new dawn. The Coalition's ships sailed into the uncharted depths of space, their banners symbols of hope and resilience. In the silence between stars, a new era had begun, one where humanity and its allies would explore, protect, and shape the galaxy's destiny. The story of the Shadow Council's fall was not just a tale of war, but a testament to the indomitable spirit of life itself. And as the suns rose over the horizon, the dawn of a new era shimmered with promise.